Hello everyone. Now you will hear a short retelling of the film Graduate. Enjoy watching. 20-year-old Benjamin Braddock graduated from college and returned home to his parents in the suburbs of Los Angeles. To celebrate this event, many guests, friends, and families came to the house. Braddock really sits sad himself. He doesn't know who to be and what to do with his life. Then everyone clings to him and does not allow passage. After running through the crowd, he was finally able to hide in his room. He was immediately followed by Mrs. Robinson, who allegedly confused his room with the toilet. She lit a cigarette right in the room and sat down on the graduate's bed. Mrs. Robinson seemed to be leaving, but she came back and asked Ben to take her home. The husband left in their car alone. The guy offered to just take his car, but in response she threw the keys into the aquarium. Ben drove the woman to her house in his brand new Aston Martin, but she won't let him go and asks him to stay with her until he turns on the lights in the house. In the same way, she lured the young man to a bar and offered him something to drink. Now she asks Ben to stay with her until her husband returns. Mrs. Robinson handed the young guest a glass of bourbon, turned on the music and asked what he thought of her. Did he know, for example, that she was an alcoholic? Ben jumped to his feet. Music, alcohol, personal conversations, a husband who won't be back soon. Mrs. Robinson, he says, are you really trying to seduce me? But immediately apologized. He was probably mistaken. The woman invited Ben into the bedroom to show a portrait of her daughter and immediately began to take off jewelry and then asks for help and to unbutton the dress. Sweating Ben in doubt, the woman undresses in front of his eyes and still convinces him that in no case is she seducing him, although maybe he would like that. Ben couldn't stand it and just ran away, but finally Mrs. Robinson asks him to bring her purse to the bathroom. She tells Ben to stop suspecting her and just do this little favor. Ben wanted to quickly leave his purse in the room and finally escape, but already completely naked Mrs. Robinson locked him in the bedroom. You can have me at any time, she tells the graduate, just call me and we'll meet, I really like you. At that moment, Mr. Robinson drove up to the house and Ben managed to get down at the last moment. The man also did not immediately let him go and poured another drink. Mr. Robinson is his father's partner. He saw the guy grow up and is now trying to mentor him. They say relax, have fun with the girls. Mrs. Robinson went downstairs and escorted the tortured guest along with her husband. Benjamin turns 21. His father informs the guests that he will continue his studies in graduate school. Mr. Braddock persuaded him to show a performance in a diving suit. The joyless guy went outside, slapped his flippers, and plunged into the water for 2 meters. Now he's lying at the bottom of the pool. It turned out to be a very funny birthday. A couple of days later, Ben called Mrs. Robinson and invited her for a drink. The lady tells him to get a room at the TAF hotel. She'll be here in an hour. Well, now we need to get a room. Ben is excited. The administrator guessed that he was here to have fun. That is, he came to the Singelman family holiday and showed where he was going now. Confused, Ben agreed with this and wandered towards the banquet. He met the Singelman and they almost sat him down at a table, but Ben quickly packed up and ran away. Mrs. Robbins found Ben in a restaurant and asks him not to be so nervous. By the way, he never rented a room. She tells Ben to get a room right now. Ben went back to the reception desk. He's shaking. He signed up as Mr. Gladstone and rented a single room. Ben is behaving very strangely and suspiciously. Mrs. Robinson's phone was brought in. It's Ben calling her, who is standing in a phone booth 20 meters away from her. Paranoid decided that the receptionist suspected something, so they need to go to the room separately. She asks Ben for the room number and says she will arrive there in an hour. Ben entered the room, turned on the light only in the bathroom and closed the blinds, and then quickly brushed his teeth. Mrs. Robinson swaggered into the room. Ben started kissing her when she took a good drag on her cigarette. I'm going to undress now, the lady warns him. Ben started banging his head against the wall. He can't go to bed with his father's partner's wife without his parents saying so, although by far Mrs. Robinson is his most attractive acquaintance. Everything is clear, the woman says. This is your first time. If you are uncomfortable, I can leave. Don't you dare, shouts Ben, and they slept together. Their meetings became regular, but it's hard to say that they brought Ben a lot of joy. It became even more difficult for him to decide what to do with his life. My father doesn't like that Ben swims in the pool all day and wonders when he will start doing something. For example, to prepare for graduate school. Then the Robinsons came to them, and Mr. Robinson says that his daughter Elaine is coming soon. It will probably be interesting for them to talk. The mother is wondering where her son disappears at night. Maybe he meets someone. After another hot night, Ben offers his mistress to chat, otherwise they always immediately jump into bed and have been for several months. As a result, they started talking about her husband. It turned out that they have been sleeping in different rooms for a long time and do not like each other. She only married him because she got pregnant with Elaine's daughter. Ben continued to bombard Mrs. Robinson with questions, and it hurts her to remember her youth and aimlessly lived years. Even less does she want to talk about Elaine. Suddenly she got angry and forbade Ben to invite her daughter on a date. Further conversation led to a quarrel. Ben thought that his mistress considered him worse than his daughter and said nasty things that he was not at all happy that he was dating an unhappy alcoholic. This is the most ridiculous thing that has happened in his life, but when he cooled down, he said that he liked their meetings and he would like Mrs. Robinson to stay. She again demands from Ben that he promise never to ask Elian on a date. The guy realized that they really shouldn't have talked. Mr. Braddock insists that her son ask her out, and so does her father. Mrs. Braddock tries to push Ben with action. She's going to invite the Robinsons to dinner. In the end, Ben himself came to family friends to take the girl on a date. His mistress met him with a completely sour face. She's angry and doesn't hide it. Ben makes excuses that they will just have dinner and then nothing will happen. He does this to avoid having dinner together, but Elaine would love to chat about this and that, but Ben answers both reluctantly and in monosyllables. He is cold with his companion and does not pay attention to her. Elaine was extremely surprised that the guy brought her to watch an erotic show. She is sure that for some reason her friend is disliked and burst into tears when the dancer began to shake her chest over her head. The girl ran out and demands to take her home. On the street, Ben tries to justify himself by saying that it was his parents who persuaded him to arrange a date. Elaine, of course, was not reassured by this news, and Ben just kissed her on the lips. Now they are happy to communicate in the car, eating burgers with French fries. At the end of the date, Elaine invited her companion to come to her house for coffee, but Ben, for obvious reasons, refuses. However, he wants to spend some more time with his peer, and Elaine offers to sit in the bar of the Taft Hotel, which our hero is familiar with. Ben pretends that he has never been here. However, every employee of the hotel greets him, calling him Mr. Glidstone. The guy realized that he had to go. After driving away a little, he confesses to Elaine that he really liked her, but he will just take her home now. The girl realized that Ben was having an affair and apparently his mistress was also married. Ben tells her that this novel is already over. Ben took the girl home and offered to meet her tomorrow. The next day, a wet Mrs. Robinson climbs into his car and orders Ben never to meet Elaine again, otherwise she will tell her daughter about their relationship. Ben drove up to the house and flew into Elaine's room to get ahead of her mother and be the first to admit that his mistress was Mrs. Robinson. Elaine shouts and throws him out of the room. "Goodbye, Benjamin," says to him an unhappy woman. Ben continued to pointlessly live out the days and at the same time keep an eye on Elaine. When Elaine left to go back to her university, Ben told his parents that he was going to marry her. However, the girl herself does not know about this yet, so Ben goes to Berkeley for her. After waiting for some time at the university, he saw his sweetheart. In order to be near her, he rents an apartment and continues to follow the student. One day, after a decent run for the bus, he decided to talk to her after all. Benjamin is chasing a girl who has reached the zoo and is going to meet someone there. A tall blond man with a pipe named Carl intercepted Elaine and left the visitor standing alone at the monkey house. Even chimpanzees have a pair. Elaine breaks into Ben's apartment and demands that he get out of here. How he got it into his head to rape her mother. According to Mrs. Robinson, the young man took advantage of the fact that she was drunk, rented her a hotel room, and then came there and raped her. His version caused the girl to have a tantrum. The landlord and several other men ran to a woman's scream and is going to call the police. Ben calmed him down, showing that everything was fine, but the landlord still ordered him to get out of the apartment. Ben started packing. He doesn't know what to do now. Elaine says she doesn't want him to leave and leaves, but she came back that night and asked her to kiss her. Ben offers to marry him. The girl is confused and does not know what to answer. She'll think about the offer. Ben is now chasing the student everywhere and insisting that they go sign right now. She doesn't mind, but first you need to meet Carl from the zoo. She also told him that she didn't mind marrying him. The stickler does not lag behind Elaine for a minute and constantly talks about getting married. Satisfied, Ben bought a ring. He screamed loudly in fright when he returned home. Mr. Robinson was waiting for him there. He is interested to find out why the guy did this to him. He does not respect him, does not like him. The man reports that he is divorcing his wife and even more prohibits seeing his daughter. He will do everything possible so that they are not together. Ben has to forget about Elaine. Mr. Robinson yelled at Ben in front of the owner's house, and he again demands that the problematic tenant get out or he will call the police. Elaine dropped out of school. In a note she told Ben that she loved him, but they still wouldn't have worked out. Ben rushed back to Los Angeles and broke into the Robinson house, but ran into not Elaine, but her mother, who immediately called the police and reported that a robber had broken into her. Ben demands to know where Elaine is, and Mrs. Robinson apologizes for not being invited to the wedding. The police arrived and Ben ran away. He intends to find his beloved, so he rushed back to Berkeley. He managed to find out from Carl's friends that the wedding would take place somewhere in Santa Barbara. Ben is on the road again and driving at full speed. He found Carl's father's number in the phone book. His secretary picked up the phone, since he himself is already at the wedding. By tricking Ben, he found out which church this wedding was taking place in. Alas, he could not get to it. He ran out of gasoline. Dirty and sweaty, he now rushes with all his legs. The main entrance is closed. From the second floor he watches as the newlyweds kissed, but does not give up and yells at the top of his voice. The guests think he's late. Elaine doesn't think so. Elaine herself calls Ben. The guy gave Mr. Robinson and Mrs. Robinson's fiancée a hard time, slapped his daughter's face. Ben grabbed a hefty cross and drives away the guests. After blocking the doors, they ran away and boarded a passing bus. Elaine and Ben laugh and look at each other, but a little time passes, the euphoria wears off and the smiles disappear from their faces because they don't know what awaits them next.